Good evening. Where's your friend?
He is not going to come.
You had holiday, no, today?
Yeah. Yesterday also it was.
Day before also. 3 days holiday you have got.
No. Day before yesterday there was no holiday. There was a holiday for afternoon shift.
Okay, not for morning. Okay. But will we finish with flower? No?
We have to start with coordination.
We are now supposed to start with coordination, fertilization. Let us start with that chapter. How was your exam?
Easy.
Easy. All correct?
Not correct.
You got diagram-based questions on?
Flower.
Structure of flower. Parts.
And pistil.
And pistil. That you will get always. Only two?
Yeah.
Only two. So we start with this chapter, pollination, fertilization. The first part of the chapter would be pollination. What to study? First of all, what is the definition of pollination? How would we define pollination? What is pollination? What is pollination?
Process of
transfer. The process of transfer of pollen grain. Process of transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma. From anther to stigma. The process of transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma. Now, when we are talking about the process of transfer of the pollen grain from the anther to the stigma, this is one plant. This is another plant. Okay, and we talk about the plants here. The process of transfer of the pollen grain, let us start understanding. So as we are talking about the process of transfer of the pollen grain, I'm saying if the process of transfer of the pollen grain is happening, now this is a bisexual flower. You already know what is the meaning of bisexual flower. This is a bisexual flower. Now in this bisexual flower, the transfer of the pollen grain is happening within the same flower, from the anther to the stigma. Then what type of pollination we are talking about? We are talking about self-pollination. And what is this method of self-pollination known as? This method of self-pollination is known as autogamy. This method of self-pollination is known as autogamy. So what is it? Bisexual self-pollination, autogamy. So what did I say? That whenever we are talking about the process of transfer of the pollen grain, process of transfer of the pollen grain from the anther to the stigma, process of transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma of the same flower, same plant. This is autogamy. But these two plants are, when I talk about that this plant, say suppose now, this plant has got another flower. This plant has got another flower, same type. So this also is a bisexual flower that I'm understanding. Now here, the transfer is happening from one flower to the other. Same plant, bisexual flower, bisexual plant. And here also the plant is only one. Transfer is happening from one flower to another. So in this case, the process of pollination is known as geitonogamy. So now this is known as geitonogamy. So now that when we are talking about, then what is the difference between autogamy and geitonogamy? Here, autogamy would basically mean transfer of pollen grain from one flower to the, or between the same flower. Process of transfer of the pollen grain is happening between the same flower, in the same flower. But when it is between two flowers of the same plant, still it is a concept of self-pollination, remember. Still it is a concept of self-pollination, but now the terms are different. We are talking about two basic processes. Next is what? Now we are talking about the process of pollination happening between two flowers of two different plants. Now this is what is known as cross-pollination. This is what is known as cross-pollination. So now that we are talking about a concept of cross-pollination, under what condition the method will be considered as cross? When the plants are different. They may be of same type, they are of course of the same type, then only the recognition. But the flowers are different, the plants are different. The plants are different. So from the anther of one flower to the stigma of the other. This method of pollination can also be termed as what? Allogamy. So three terms we understood just now. Autogamy, geitonogamy and allogamy. The three methods of pollination. Now, when we are talking about the concept of pollination, now next one, that the process of pollination would generally happen only between or only relating to certain aspects. Certain aspects in the sense, when we are talking about when these two plants are undergoing the process of pollination, we are saying it is cross-pollination, but of course, these two plants have to be of the same species. They have to identify each other. They should be able to identify each other. The pollen grain has to identify each other. After the basic concept of pollination, the terms, now we move on, that what could be some of the factors responsible for the process of pollination. Now, self-pollination we have been talking about. Okay, now next is we look into how can self-pollination occur? What are some of the factors? What are some of the conditions? Self-pollination, we have to understand. You will always give reason questions, distinctive questions from this. What are some of the conditions? Let us look into the bisexuality and homogamy. Number one, bisexuality and homogamy. So let us talk about, first of all, that what is the meaning of bisexuality? Now, this particular plant is having bisexual flowers. This particular plant is very much competent of undergoing the process of self-pollination. It does not actually have to depend on any other plant, any other flower. But had these plants been giving rise to only unisexual flowers, then would they be able to carry out the process of self-pollination? No. This was unisexual, this is unisexual. So these flowers are bound to depend on other flowers. So if it is bisexuality, is this a condition good enough for plants to allow the process of self-pollination? Yes. Give two examples of bisexual flowers. Hibiscus, pea. All these examples to always remember. Now, what is the meaning of homogamy? Homogamy would always mean the maturation timing of the anther, or say the stamen and the carpel. So when I talk about homogamy, homogamy always means that the stamen and the carpel, are they mature at the same time? That is very, very important. Because I am talking about a bisexual flower also now. Now the stamen and the carpel. So if I talk about that the stamen and the carpel are mature at the same time and it is a bisexual flower, self-pollination is definite. When I talk about a bisexual flower, the stamen is developed but the carpel is not. Can it undergo the process of self-pollination? No, there will be a problem. Or say the other way, carpel is developed, stamen not. Then also it will not be allowing the process of self-pollination happen. No? So only being bisexual, will it really help a flower to show the process of self-pollination always?
Yes.
Yes? No. That is what we learn. Only being bisexual. The flower is bisexual. But the flower has both the stamen and carpel. But when the stamen is fully mature, the carpel is yet to mature. The carpel is not fully developed at that time. When the carpel is already developed in certain flowers, the carpel is fully developed, but the stamen is still maturing. But the flower is bisexual, no? So every time being bisexual, yes, bisexuality is always a property to allow the process of self-pollination happen. But sometimes we understand that homogamy is also very much necessary. Bisexual and homogamy both should be there. Then self-pollination obvious, no? Next, we look into certain characteristics. Let us look into now advantages. Look into these advantages and disadvantages of self-pollination. Now, if I talk about advantages and disadvantages, some of these points are always very, very important to mention in certain questions. Now, advantages of self-pollination would be what? Advantages of self-pollination would be that certain basic characteristics of the parents can be maintained over generation. Advantage, that is the advantage part of it. We are getting a specific variety of plants over and over generations. I talk about a good breed of some flowers. I understand that there's a very good breed of some sunflowers. Sunflower, I talk about some very good breed of mustard seeds. I talk about some very good variety of rice. I talk about some very good variety of mangoes. Now, by the process of self-pollination, the same and the same and the same and the same can be obtained for generations, meaning in large numbers we can obtain. Yes, that is why self-pollination is possible. So, what is one big advantage of self-pollination? We can talk about maintenance of the characters. We can talk about the same variety we can get for generations and generations. What else? Advantage of self-pollination?
The flower doesn't need to be colorful for insect pollination. It does not need to be
these are the characteristics of insect pollination and those will come later. Now we are talking about self-pollination only. What are some of the advantages? How will a plant be benefited in the process of self-pollination? The plant did not produce so many pollen. Self-pollination. Because the flower is bisexual, the pollen from the anther can fall on the stigma, which are very close in the same flower itself. The plant did not waste so much of its energy and nutrients in the making of the fragrance and the scent. No, and of course, also making the flower colorful. So majorly we have to understand that the plant need not make so many pollen, need not produce nectar, need not produce scent, fragrance. But what is the disadvantage? Self-pollination has disadvantage also. What is the disadvantage part of self-pollination?
No new varieties.
No new varieties, because we are not talking about mixing of characters between flowers, between parents. The same plant, the same type of flowers, and generation after generation. So if at all a particular plant has got a defective characteristic, can the defective characteristic be removed generations over generation? No, it will keep on repeating. It will keep on repeating. So that is one of the most important disadvantage. You may take all these points that we are discussing. What is the disadvantage of self-pollination? Does self-pollination has disadvantage? Yes, it also has disadvantage. Any improved variety, we don't get any improved variety. We never get any improved variety. Rather, we come across always that the improved varieties are not obtained. But always we come across that if at all any defective characteristic is there, it gets repeated generation after generation. Well, these are some of the advantages and the disadvantages of self-pollination to remember. Now we talk about the concept of cross-pollination. We talk about cross-pollination. First of all, we'll look into what are some of the advantages. Let us first of all understand the advantages, then we'll look into the conditions. Advantages of cross-pollination, disadvantages and advantages. Now I talk about first of all the advantage. What is the most important advantage? New varieties. Because we are talking about two types of plants. Two plants. Mixing of characters are there, new varieties are obtained. What is the other advantage of cross-pollination?
Offsprings are healthier.
Offsprings are the plants which are formed by cross-pollination is always more resistant to environmental factors. The offsprings or the type of plants are always more healthier. The fruits, flowers, crops, whatever, are formed, if they are formed by the method of cross-pollination, they are always the better varieties always. They are more resistant, they are more healthier. What about the disadvantage part? What is the most important disadvantage related with cross-pollination we come across? Underline that word, cross-pollination is uneconomical. It is less economical always. Why is it considered to be less economical? Because the plant is producing or losing, wasting so much of energy, nutrients. It is releasing, utilizing so much of its nutrients and energy, making the large number of pollen, because the process of fertilization and pollination is uncertain, no? In case of cross-pollination. The pollen is produced in hundreds. Out of these hundreds, maybe only few may come in contact with the right type of stigma and show the process of fertilization and form a seed and a flower. So most of them are just a loss because they may not come in contact with the flower at the right time. And another basic concept about cross-pollination, disadvantage to talk about cross-pollination is the method of pollination is uncertain. It is an uncertain process. It is not a surer process like self-pollination. Self-pollination is just sure. As long as homogamy is there and as long as the flower is bisexual, it is sure that this flower is. Now, when we are talking about self and cross, remember, a plant produces 20 flowers. All the flowers are bisexual. Chances of fertilization in all the 20 flowers are much high. A plant produces unisexual flowers. 20 flowers are there. So out of these 20 flowers, we may come across that only 8 may have given rise to a fruit. So these 12 flowers are just a waste for the plant, no? With the nectar and the bright color and the scent and all these things. It is just a waste for the plant. So the 12 flowers and the whole lot of pollen, so much of energy and nutrient gone. Just wasted. So whenever we are talking about why is cross-pollination uneconomical, these are some of the points that you have to write down. Why is cross-pollination uneconomical? It is uneconomical because the plant has to utilize or lose so much of its nutrients. The cross-pollination, the method is uneconomical because the plant has to waste so much of its energy, the plant has to waste so much of its nutrients in the process of making the pollen, in making the flower big enough, prominent enough, making it brightly colored, scented, nectar, etc. etc. Now we talk about that what are some of the conditions for the process of cross-pollination. Under what different condition the plant would generally show cross-pollination? What are some of the conditions? Let us understand. Conditions that favor cross-pollination. What are some of the conditions that would favor the process of cross-pollination? Now, the conditions that we are going to talk about would be 5 conditions are there, which are some of the conditions nature favors cross-pollination. Just keep telling me the factors. One is unisexuality.
Dichogamy.
Number 2 is dichogamy.
Self-sterility.
Number 3 is self-sterility.
Hercogamy.
Number 4 is hercogamy. And heterostyle. Right? Heterostyle. So let us understand all these. When we are talking about unisexuality, this just now we have been talking about also, that if I talk about a plant, now this is a particular plant, and this particular plant has flowers, and these flowers are unisexual. Is this flower competent enough to give rise to a seed? Is this flower competent enough to give rise to a seed? No. So I may understand that this is a plant, and this flower is a male flower, this flower is a female flower. This is a male flower, this is a female flower. Now in each of these cases, if this is a male flower and this is a female flower, each of these flowers, they are not capable of undergoing the formation of a seed. It very much depends whether this particular flower, this is a unisexual flower. So this flower is very much dependent on this one. So this is one condition. What about the other one? I may talk about that in this plant, all the flowers are female flowers. And in this plant, all the flowers are the male flowers. So in this plant, we come across the flowers are all male flowers. So the dependence is even more now. This plant will give rise to fruits only when the anther comes in contact with the stigma at the right time. So this particular plant gives rise to a large number of fruits depending on whether the anther releases pollen in large number coming in contact. So unisexuality, whenever a plant is giving rise to unisexual flowers, in the chapter flower you have already come across. Can a plant be unisexual or bisexual?
No, it can be monoecious or
It
bisexual.
can be monoecious. Remember, the moment I am talking about unisexual and bisexual, it is only for a flower that we are talking about. But just now, I was telling you this type of a condition. What type of a plant it is?
This is a monoecious.
Monoecious. Monoecious means both male and female flowers are in the same plant. Dioecious. Separate male, separate female. So now, here I am understanding that is unisexuality a condition which is not allowing self-pollination happen? Yes, majorly, because if a plant is having unisexual flower, then it is absolutely dependent on cross-pollination. It is absolutely dependent on cross-pollination. Dichogamy, what is it? Just the opposite of homogamy. Dichogamy that we are talking about. What is dichogamy? To understand, dichogamy that we are talking about is certain times. Now, dichogamy, the definition is that different maturation timing of the stamen of the carpellin flowers. But remember, I am talking about what a unisexual flower only I am talking about. In case of a unisexual dichogamy, I am talking about a unisexual flower. But in case of a unisexual flower, the stamen and the carpel, are they mature at the same time? No. If this is mature, this is not. If this is mature, this is not. This is what is happening. So this is the flower. I am talking about a particular plant. The plant is unisexual. Okay, each of these flowers are unisexual. Each of these flowers are unisexual, two different plants. But in this case, I see that the stamen is developed, but the carpel is not. The stamen is developed, the carpel is not. In this what? Carpel is developed, stamen is not. So, is this plant capable of giving rise to a fruit? No. And the same here. So, possible if the stamen and the pollen from here comes in contact with this, and this may give rise to a seed fruit by the process of pollination. So, obviously, we are understanding that if in certain flowers, though they are bisexual, and the stamen and the carpel are not matured at the same time, then this would obviously allow the plant or the flower to be dependent on cross-pollination. Though they are bisexual, not necessary always that they should undergo the process of self-pollination. So in this regard, we come across sometimes the stamens are well developed. So such type of condition is known as protandry, carpel well developed, stamens not. Such type of condition we term it as protogyny. What are these? Protandry, protogyny. What are these differences? Remember, if the stamen is well developed, carpel not. Protandry. Carpel is well formed, stamen not. Protogyny. And what are these subtypes of? These are the subtypes of dichogamy. Write one difference between homogamy and dichogamy. What will you write?
So homogamy is the condition when the
condition of a plant or a flower.
When the stamen and the carpel mature at the same
time. And they favor
self-pollination.
Dichogamy.
It is a condition of a flower when the stamen and the carpel mature at different times.
And they cannot favor self-pollination and they favor cross-pollination. Take out your notebook, put the name of the chapter, head of the chapter, and take on the first question. Write one difference between homogamy and dichogamy with one example in each case. One difference between homogamy and dichogamy. One difference between homogamy and dichogamy with one example in each case. One difference between homogamy and dichogamy with one example in each case. You will make a table and write very neat. Right from now that you are in the 9th standard. It's not even midway of the session. Make it a habit. Presentation, really make it a habit. It should be very neat and very good. What you told just now, write it down in points. You have a doubt? Homogamy, dichogamy.
For example, what should be?
For homogamy, what type of flowers would show homogamy? Unisexual flowers. What type of flowers would show dichogamy?
So not the name of the flower, but like some hibiscus or like that.
Same examples only. Protandrous flowers and protogyny, see there. Must be there, no? Protandrous.
There is but homogamy, there is no example.
Homogamy, you just have to write examples for unisexual flowers. Homogamy, unisexual flowers majorly are homogamous. Homogamy, you write on examples. Sunflower, wheat, rice. You can write examples of this.
Sunflower.
Wheat, rice.
Sunflower example is given in dichogamy, protandry.
Protandry. Where?
Dichogamy, protandry.
Dichogamy. Where is it? Protandry. Salvia is there. Salvia of these is a bisexual class. No? Salvia. Sunflower is.
Before dichogamy definition, do we have to mention protandry and protogamy?
I asked you to write difference between homogamy and dichogamy. No? You will only write down the. Now you will not write down difference between protandry and protogamy. This you will not write. You will only write down the basic difference between homogamy and dichogamy with one example in each. Wait, let me give you some more examples of homogamy. Sunflower, then don't write because it becomes contradictory here. Sunflowers are there, I mentioned. Dichogamy, not a problem. You can write examples of other bisexual flowers also. Shown, but you can write wheat and rice. You write. This is one something. Salvia is dichogamy. Salvia is always dichogamy. Right, wheat and rice for the time being. So we are talking about what? A basic difference between homogamy, dichogamy. So what was dichogamy and what are the two types of dichogamy when you are asked? What are the two types of dichogamy? Protandry and protogamy. Now what is the basic difference between protogamy and protandry? In a protandrous flower, what is happening?
The stamen
is mature faster than the carpel. And protogynous flower, carpel, mature faster than the stem. So this is the concept. We talk about self-sterility. Now what is self-sterility? Suppose I talk about this as a bisexual flower. This is a bisexual flower. Now what is the meaning of a bisexual flower? The carpel and the pistil present. The carpel and the stamen present. Now in this in this condition of the flower, they are self-sterile. Meaning what? Meaning when the pollen of the anther comes in contact with the stigma, the pollen grain does not show the process of germination at all. The stigma is very much there. The female parts are very much there. But then the pollen grain may not be well developed, or the female parts are very much there, but then the female parts may not be showing, or the female parts may not be showing the proper growth, maturation, or release of enzymes, hormones, etc. So meaning, quite a number of times in flowers and in animals, the reproductive organs are there, but then the reproductive organs may not be functional. In such cases, the organism is known to be sterile because the reproductive organs are there, and since they are not functional, the reproductive organs are not capable of giving rise to functional cells, gametes, enzymes, hormones, etc. So ultimately they become without any function. That is what is meant by sterility. So what can be the options here? What are the conditions here? Maybe the anther has produced well number of pollen and the pollen come in contact with the stigma, but the stigma is present as a structure but no function. Enzymes, hormones, etc., not released in the proper amount, and hence the stigma could not receive the pollen and nothing further can happen. It can be the other way also. The pollen which is falling on the stigma are not of the correct structure, shape, etc. So the stigma is not able to recognize, though they are bisexual. The stigma is not able to recognize, and the growth of the pollen does not happen. Though they are bisexual, the male part or the female part cannot recognize. So that is the basic concept of self-sterility. Hercogamy, what? When we talk about hercogamy, say suppose we talk about the female parts of the flower. Now, in this, in the concept of hercogamy, we understand that this is the stigma, and then there would be the style, and then the later part of the flower. We'll draw these diagrams later. Now, as we talk about the stigma, what is hercogamy? In certain type of flowers, we come across that they may have some additional flap-like tissues like this. 1, 2, 3. Now, some additional tissues are there in such a way that the stigma partially remains covered. Additional tissues are actually not supposed to be there. Most of the flowers we don't find them. The additional tissues are not there over the stigma. The stigma is more or less exposed. So that large number of pollen it can allow landing. And out of the large number also, only 1 or 2 will start the process of pollen formation, and out of that also only 1 pollen will be successful in formation of the male gametes. So now that I talk about that, yes, in certain flowers we come across that the stigma remains covered by some membranous outgrowths. Membranous outgrowths are there. Now because of these membranous outgrowths, what is happening? The stigma remains covered partially. So if this is a bisexual flower, say suppose, yes, this is a very much a bisexual flower. This is very much a bisexual flower. But the pollen that it is releasing, is it going to come in contact with the stigma? No. The pollen does not come in contact with the stigma. The pollen released in large numbers, never mind. But the pollen will have to enter, and only few will enter.
But this does not give any benefits to the plant.
So maybe only few entering, and out of those, hardly some will have the chance of getting or start the process of germination, fertilization, but most of the times it will not happen. Even though it's a bisexual flower, even though it is producing large number of pollen, the pollen is just getting wasted because of the extra hood-like structure, membranous cover-like structure partially covering the stigma. If that is so, hercogamy. What is heterostyle then in that case? If it is heterostyle, what would happen? In one type of a condition, it would be something like this. In case of heterostyle, in one type of a condition, it would be something like this. Then I talk about that this is the stigma. I talk about this is the stigma. Now that this is the stigma, and now the pollen. Okay. Now this is the stigma and the anther here. This is the stigma and the anther here. This is one type of a condition. What can be something else? Something else would be that I talk about the thalamus of the flower, and this is the anther, and this is the anther. What about the stigma? The stigma is here now. The stigma is here now. So in heterostyle, what are we coming across? The uneven heights of the stigma and the anther. Of course, both of them would develop from the thalamus, but sometimes we come across that the stigma or the entire neck-like region of the carpel, the style is quite long. Never mind, this one must be releasing a large number of pollen, but will this pollen come in contact with the stigma in large numbers? Probably not. This anther is producing large number of pollen, but the stigma is at a much lower height. some of them will of course follow the stigma, some of them will get lost, some of them will be carried away. So though the anther producing large number of pollen, is it that maximum of them coming in contact with the stigma and increasing the chances of fertilization? No. Again, the chances of fertilization less, chances of fertilization less. So if we talk about heterostyly, especially in this case where the anther are outwardly curved, the filaments and the anther outwardly curved. Now since they are outwardly curved, what happens? More number of anther will be carried further by the wind and they will generally come in contact with other flowers. Though the flower is bisexual, this stigma does not get adequate number of pollen. It does not get adequate number of pollen, or the pollen remains all outwardly distributed, dispersed. A bisexual flower, but still favoring cross-pollination. Hercogamy, a bisexual flower, but still favoring cross-pollination. Self-sterility, a bisexual flower, but still favoring cross-pollination. Dichogamy, a bisexual flower, but still favoring cross-pollination. So here all the factors that we are studying is, we are talking about, yes, most of the examples that we pick up are all bisexual flowers, but for some or the other reason, these flowers, being bisexual, they do not show the process of self-pollination, but they are mostly dependent on the process of cross-pollination. Why? Because of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 5 major conditions. Okay. Now, take the next question. Give 2 examples each for sub number A. Two examples each for sub number A. Plants that show hercogamy. Plants that show hercogamy. Number B. Plants that show heterostyly. Plants that show heterostyly. Plants that show heterostyly. 2 examples each. Examples you will have to remember. Examples you will have to remember. Just 2 examples you write. In this chapter, examples are very often asked. Characteristics are asked as give reasons for 1 mark, 2 marks. So see that you write points properly. Okay. Now take one question. Take one question. Write the odd one out. Mention the odd one out. And write the category to which the rest belong. Write the category to which the rest belong. Number 1. Number 1. Sweet pea, ladyfinger, sweet pea, ladyfinger, sweet pea, ladyfinger, salvia, sweet pea, ladyfinger, salvia, hibiscus, sweet pea, ladyfinger, salvia, hibiscus. Number 2, you will leave 2 lines for writing down the answer. Number 2. Number 2. Self-sterility self sterility, hercogamy, self sterility, hercogamy, dichogamy, self sterility, hercogamy, dichogamy, and homogamy. Homogamy, comma, you write homogamy. The last one, number 3, 2 lines for the answer, then number 3. 2 lines for the answer, number 3. Number 3. Autogamy, geitonogamy, GEI, allogamy, types of allogamy to and the last one we will write cleistogamy. 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 Okay. Now, I give you 4 terms: autogamy, allogamy, geitonogamy, cleistogamy. Now, for this, let me just discuss this question. Which one you would consider as the odd?
Cleistogamy.
Why?
Because in cleistogamy, the flower is closed throughout the time, and autogamy, dichogamy, and allogamy are the types of self-pollination and cross-pollination where the flower is open.
These are methods of pollination where flowers bloom. Flowers bloom to favor the process of pollination. Or you can also write the other 3 are methods of pollination when flowers bloom. Cleistogamy, a condition which allow pollination even when the flowers do not bloom. These are very small flowers which does not even bloom at the process of pollination. Now, how do you write this set of questions? You are supposed to write down the odd one and the category very clearly. Otherwise, as it is, you will miss the entire 5 marks in this question. You write odd and don't write category. You write category, you don't write odd. Both ways, you will miss entire 5 marks, even if your category all are correct, or if your odd terms all are correct.
Others belong to
This one I said, the first 3 belong to one category. So what is the odd one out? The cleistogamy. Odd one out is cleistogamy. Category, what will you write? Favor pollination when the flowers bloom. The rest are conditions. Favor pollination when flowers bloom. In cleistogamy, the flower does not bloom at all. Petals do not open up. Try the other 2 that I gave you.
First one, odd one, hibiscus.
Hibiscus, because it favors homogamy. Hibiscus favors homogamy. Hibiscus is also one more example you can add there. Favors homogamy. The other favors dichogamy. Salvia P always dichogamy. And the next?
Homogamy is the odd one out. Others belong to.
What are the terms I gave you?
Self-sterility, orthogamy, dichogamy, homogamy.
Homogamy, odd one out. What about the other?
They are the nature's
conditions that favor cross-pollination.
Cross-pollination.
The rest favors cross-pollination. Conditions that favor cross-pollination. Now, read the basic differences between self and cross-pollination. See if the points are all clear. We discussed already. See any of the points if you feel not very clear to you. All clear? Now, next is agents of cross-pollination. Here, first of all, we will learn all the terms. Agents, which you always get as questions in your paper. Match the column, very common this type of questions. When we are talking about agents and the types, we talk about the agents and their respective types. I talk about if wind is an agent, the method of pollination will be termed as anemophily. And the mode of pollination will be termed as anemophily. And the plant will be termed as anemophilous. Second, I talk about insects. Insects would be termed as entomophily and entomophilous. What next? We talk about water. Hydrophily. Hydrophily and hydrophilus. Remember the terms. Next is we talk about birds. Ornithophily. Ornithophily and ornithophilus. What next? Elephants. Elephants. This view, it's really scary. Elephants. Elephophily. Elephophily and elephophilus. Okay. So this 5 only you have in your syllabus. You will have to remember them. These are some of these which you always get. Now, the first thing that you have to remember is 2 examples of each case. Underline in your book also there. 2 examples in each case. Elephophily, the example is very distinctive. Rafflesia to remember. There's no chance for getting that example at all. Wind pollination. What are some common examples? The maize. Okay. You talk about the maize, wind pollination, we understand. We talk about the insect pollination. In some of these cases, only one example is given. Homework for you.
For insect and wind pollinator, only one example.
One example. So now the homework for you, right up there on the textbook, up there space. You will find out two examples, extra examples you are going to find out. For each type, minimum 2 to 3 examples you will find out and write it down on the book itself. I'm going to ask you the next class. This remains as a homework for you. For each type, you should remember 2 to 3 examples. Okay? Wind pollination, anemophily, entomophily, hydrophily, ornithophily, elephophily. For each type, Minimum 2 examples. For all these you will get enough. Alipophilia you will not get too many. Aphasia is one, but there are still another 2-3 types. Try to find out another one. And here at least 3 examples each, of course. Write it down in your textbook. I will again discuss with this. Hydrilla, and then we talk about the water lily. All these are examples. At least 3 examples you will write down in your note for this one. Textbook.
क्या है उसको इतना काम?
अरे वो तो फिजिक्स का एग्जाम को भी नहीं आया क्यों?
फिजिक्स के हाँ उसका बर्थडे था।
बर्थडे प्लस क्या बोलता है मैच है।
हाँ उसका मैच था। 2 गोल उसने किया मैंने देखा। मतलब मैं गया नहीं था इंस्टाग्राम पे देखा। क्योंकि मुझे इंस्टाग्राम पे तो फोटोज
जा रहा है
किधर तो ये पता नहीं एक पिक्चर जाना है okay guys recording चली जाएगी इसका क्या हम खेला ना